My camera is on the facing this way.
Ah.
Is that okay for you, Rob? Okay. Now I can look at Ike towards the camera. Thank you. Take two. Hey, everybody, this is Patty. Welcome to the Witching Hour. Yes, the hour of the day when the veil is thin and magic happens. I have a beautiful guest for you today. We get to know him together, but I'm so in awe of everything he has done and everybody that he is. He is a practitioner, he is an author. Welcome, Ike Baker. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Patty. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I am glad. You have a deep background, as I was saying, both Western and Eastern esoteric traditions. You are in very many different Hermeticism and this and that and the other thing. So I have all sorts of questions. So we'll just jump right in.
Sure.
And feel to lead anywhere. You guys are going to love this guy. So, okay. You have been described as a scholar, a magician, a teacher with one foot in ceremonial magic, ceremonial temples in West, and one with the mystic paths of the East. How did this magical journey begin? What kind of pulled you into your path?
Honestly, complete accident. So I'll tell a little story. I've told it before, but
Tell it
it's
again.
it's kind of a little bit of a fun origin story. So as a kid growing up, right, I grew up on Long Island, so I'm from the suburbs in New York, outside of the city. There wasn't a whole lot of occultism, magic that was readily available. You had to like look for it and dig for it, and I didn't even know what it was. But I at around 18, 19 years old, I started taking an interest in what was available to me. So, like, that kind of Dan Brown style occultism and things like that, Freemasonry. So, a lot of fun. But at some point, my aunt had a tenant, and very quiet lady, kept to herself, and she passed away. She ended up, it's a little bit of a macabre story, but she ended up throwing herself in front of a train. And my aunt asked me, please, if I could come over. She went down into the apartment afterwards to, gather her effects and prepare them for next of kin. She ended up being a hoarder. So there was like stacks of books, like, that classic kind of movie hoarder thing where you're walking through the aisles and stuff. And they were all books and notebooks still wrapped in cellophane. So, I was helping her with one of my friends carry these boxes, these heavy loads of books, to the truck to be donated, etc. Um, and one caught my eye, and it was called. I still have it. It's called The Oracle of Kabbalah by Richard Seidman. And I asked my aunt, I'm like, this is a little weird, but would you mind if I take this book? And she said, yeah. Well, she had no next of kin, so all of this that doesn't get donated has to go like the curb or something like that. So go ahead and take it. So it's a very, very thin book. I spent about 2 hours walking around my neighborhood reading it, and when I was done with it, I wasn't necessarily any more enlightened about Kabbalah as I was before, but I knew it was important. So I went on the yellow pages or white pages when people used to use those on the
Mhm.
internet, and I wrote Long Island Kabbalah Group, and some information came up. I reached out to the guy. Oh, there it is. I
Oh,
reached out to the information that was given, and the message I got back was, this group doesn't meet any longer, but there's this other thing. And that other thing ended up being the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And so after a long courtship period, where I kind of flaked a couple of times, I ended up initiating, and in the same year, really just within weeks of each other, I also decided to go back to school for um, bodywork modalities, and particularly Chinese medicine. So it,
mm.
it, it it was really, I had no idea that either of them were going to dovetail, and sort of relate to each other so perfectly, so intimately, but they just did. And, the rest is kind of history.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful story. And so you've studied everything from Hermetic Kabbalah, as you're saying, to esoteric Taoism. How do you, or do you balance or weave together the Eastern and Western stuff for your personal practice?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it's kind of the beginning stages of that is essentially what my latest book, Etheric Magic, is actually about. I noticed at a certain point that, you know, the Western system, it's it kind of, especially Golden Dawn style magic, Hermetic Kabbalah magic, which is actually what a lot of modern magic is based
Mhm.
on, right? Don Michael Craig, Dion Fortune, Israel Regardie,
Yeah.
Aleister Crowley. That's all Golden Dawn magic, all of it. So it's based on this Hermetic Kabbalah, and there's a lot of uh, unspoken energy work in it. You know, they talk about rays, they talk about forces, they talk about power, but they don't really describe it to the same sort of precision and thoroughness as it is described in the Eastern
Yeah.
traditions, right? We all know, well, I guess maybe not all of us, but the West has become much more aware in the last 20 years of the concept of chi, right? Universal life force energy. Like that's where the root of the word qi gong, energy work, comes from. So I noticed that really we were dancing around it in the Western tradition, and I decided that I was kind of doing it anyway. Right. I was already doing my Qigong and my middle pillar exercise and my tree of life and the sphere of sensation or aura exercise. And I'm like, this is a Western Qigong. Let's see how we can further meld and mesh these two systems. And it worked out. I mean, almost effortlessly. It just kind of locked together over the course of now it's been probably 10 or 11 years of that kind of synthesis. But yeah, I mean, I begin the morning with between 10 and 20 minutes of meditation, and then I go into my Western Qigong until I feel like I'm done.
That's good. So they meld beautifully. So
Yeah.
taking your traditions into that's good.
Yeah.
Your earlier book, we're going to talk about both books, but your earlier book explores the magical traditions of the West. What do you feel is missing from today's understanding of those traditions? What are you hoping to reignite with, like, even the new book? Is
Uh, you know, it's really interesting because the first book is called A Formless Fire, and to me, it's talked about in a I got the title for the first book from a essentially what is referred to kind of as the Bible of Neoplatonic or Hermetic theurgy, right? So the ancient ceremonial magic applied to specifically spiritual development. And this is it's very it's old. It's not something that's kind of a new invention, and we're it's reemerging in magical circles and also in mainstream discussions over the past couple of years. But there is this Bible of theurgy, so to speak, called the Chaldean Oracles, and it talks about a formless fire, which is diffuse and everywhere and interpenetrating of all things, and is the essential constituent of which the universe and everything is made. And so this formless fire is essentially the same thing as chi, which is the universal life force energy. So I tied the two books together by way of that, titling it A Formless Fire, because the thing that I think a lot of uh, that's not it doesn't really get the coverage I think that it truly deserves in a lot of magical circles. Theurgy is essentially, that ceremonial magic that was pioneered by the Egyptians and the Greeks, that was passed on to us in the form of mystery schools. It's kind of set to the side. People aren't really aware, let alone appreciative of it. They're not aware of it a lot of the time. They don't really know what it is. They kind of conflate it with something that's sort of maybe religious, rather than just quintessentially magical. But what it is it's actually the application of the technologies and techniques of magic for the purposes of spiritual development and elevation. And so there's a component of it that is, has to do with internal alchemy. And that's the same thing in the Eastern tradition, right? Esoteric Taoism, they call it Neidan. It's their system of internal or individual spiritual alchemy. So I wanted to really reinsert that into the conversation because for those who may be familiar, there was a, a very talented and well-known magician who passed away a couple of years ago. His name was Jake Stratton Kent, and he wrote a couple of books, Geosophia, The Argo of Magic, and he really emphasized the Goetic tradition of conjuration. And I felt since that point, theurgy had kind of been just kicked to the side. And in reality, we talk about how we inherit so much of our modern magic from the Golden Dawn. The Golden Dawn was practicing theurgy. They said it explicitly in their inner order foundational documents numerous times. And, all of this tradition comes to us by way of that initiatory, right? These guys weren't solo practitioners. They were initiates, men and women, initiates of this theurgic order. And so to me, being a Golden Dawner, sure, I have an obvious bias there, but what I saw, unfortunately, was, the ancestors of my order had kind of what they had gifted to the world had kind of been picked apart like a car left in a bad neighborhood, and the foundation, the purpose, the reason for which they put this stuff together and proliferated it had been tossed to the side. I wanted to do my best to reintroduce that to the discussion. But that aside, it's a fairly encyclopedic volume that in each chapter goes over. It covers astrology, it covers alchemy, it covers tarot, different types of divination, and it covers the history, theory, and practice of all of the arts. And there's some appendices at the back that give the reader practical exercises and commentaries that they can do at home.
That is fabulous. It sounds like a must-have book for anybody interested in it or a practitioner going their way. Now, is this a book? I have a lot of both beginners, very new to magic and the craft, as well as, well-seasoned old folks. So is this book worked both ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wrote it for, unfortunately, it was my first book. So I, it was, I hadn't really honed the craft of brevity yet, but the thing is, the people who really seem to consume the book they love the fact that it's kind of a fountain of information. And it is, I wrote it personally for people that are new to this, to give them an orientation that they could understand this stuff, right? I mean, it was probably like, I had been doing this stuff for 10 years before I kind of realized what it was, and had this picture of, oh, these are traditions, and, they extend far back into the past. And with that said, there's a fairly tremendous amount of record and technique base that I can learn from. It doesn't have to be new books, doesn't have to be old books, but I can avail myself of the rich, textual resources that we have of these magical, astrological, divinatory, and alchemical traditions in the West. So it is for the beginner. Now, despite the fact that it's kind of information overload in a lot of ways, it is written to be very readable. So like I said, each chapter covers one subject, and I try and string them together and in meaningful ways. But overall, if you want to learn about astrology, the history, theory, and practice of astrology today, you go to the astrology chapter. You want to learn about the history, theory, and practice of alchemy or divination, you go to those chapters. So I think in that sense, it's very much readable for the beginner.
Oh, that's fabulous. And again, I don't know if anybody else is doing this like this. I've been doing this show like 5 years now, haven't missed a week, and all these beautiful authors and leaders of the occult, and nobody has done this so far. So this, I can't wait. This sounds.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was approached and asked to write a book for Tria Prima Press, who would go on to publish A Formless Fire. And I said, well, what do you want me to write about? And they said, anything. And so I said to my publisher right there, if I can write about anything, then I want to write about everything. So I did my best to to
Mm.
deliver on that.
That's amazing. Okay. Um, do you think we are seeing an occult revival, or are we still in a sort of like surface spirituality kind of thing?
Well, I think the occult has been with us. Like my teachers, some of my teachers, Chick and Tabby, Cicero, people like Ivo Dominguez, who is just, instrumental in the Etheric Magic book, and he wrote the forward. They've been writing, and at a very high level for a long time. So I look at it now more as a renaissance
Mm.
than a revival. I think it's truly um, a time where all of these seeds that these people were very diligently planting, perhaps to very little, you know, remuneration or accolade. Now they're, it's we as a community are reaping their work, and it's a great time to be an occultist. It's a great time to be a magician. But as you aptly point out, there are always, right? I mean, there's a saying in the Golden Dawn: the forces of darkness inevitably arise when the work of the light is endeavored in earnest. So you're always going to get uh equal pushback, so
Yeah.
when great stuff happens, there's an equal amount of either I would say religious intolerance and pushback, or now this kind of added thing. And I think this is kind of a new thing for humanity, is spirituality as mass media sort of palliative sort of thing. So but you know it's good, I think, to have inroads to the real stuff, and the people who really are called to it, they'll stick around, they'll find it, they'll get through the sort of outer trappings of aesthetic, and I truly believe if they're meant to be here, they'll get here.
Yeah, that's what I think too. The witch talks of the world and things that like, what? Where you tip your head a little, but somebody might go, oh wait, there's a seed of something there. I should look into this that they maybe never would have.
Right. Yeah, I
I
agree.
think that's great. What do you think? Okay, speaking of like ceremonial magic or high ritual, what do you think is the most misunderstood thing about it in general?
Um, I mean, this is probably probably not a popular opinion, but um,
That's okay.
magic has consequences, and just like its effects, right? You could say that magic is a technique or an art whose delivery mechanisms are occult, meaning you cannot see them. Most of the time, you cannot see how magic is working. You just know that it does. We do our best to compile theories, and that makes us feel good. And we pat ourselves on the back. We get it. But at the end of the day, these things are called the mysteries for a reason.
Yes.
And now, you know, also, magic is going to have some consequences that I think, those working parts, that the wheel work of that karmic wheel work is not necessarily readily apparent to a lot of people. So I think that we need to, as a community, you know remain, or maybe even get a little more diligent in the way that we approach the other side of the veil, because we're at a disadvantage. There's nothing on the other side of that veil that is under any obligation truly to tell us, reveal to us its true forms or intentions. So I wouldn't want to become paranoid or alarmist or fearful, but I would, the Golden Dawn has a a wealth of, I would say, guardrails or guide rails,
Mhm.
so that the magic that we perform is very, very specific. In other words, I'm not, opening up. I'm getting specifically what I'm calling for, and I'm doing my best to curate an environment that is amenable to, or inviting, or um, attractive to the thing that I want to call in, and the intention of the ritual. So that's something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily want to look at, because it's not fun.
Right.
It's not the fun part of magic. But I, as a teacher and an administrator, I'm a temple chief now of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. I run the Asheville Temple. Um, as an administrator, these are things that I have to tell people. This is kind of what's on my docket.
Right. That's good. That I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's the going deep into what it is. Speaking of you as a teacher, you have an Arcanum channel and a podcast, and it is a treasure trove of occult knowledge. What inspired? Tell us what that is, and what inspired you to start this documentary style amazing treasure trove.
Well, that's very kind of you to refer to it like that.
It,
I I kept my mouth shut for many years, and again, I felt that um, magic is real, and I think anybody that's spent any time um, practicing it understands that. And
Mhm.
again, going back to the whole idea of best practices, and also the idea of, hey, this is really big and really cool and really fun, right? Because I mean, anybody who knows like the history of the occult knows that it's the history of the world. Like, world history is occult history, So it's a lot of fun, and I think that can both deepen and broaden our connection to the tradition, and make us really, I think, the best possible stewards of that tradition, and to be able to pass it on to the next generation as well. So I saw a little bit of a vacuum in that area. There were some really good scholars like Justin Sledge, uh, and many others, Dana Trell, Angela Puka, who do that work, but it's very academic. And so I wanted to create a channel where belief isn't a four-letter word. I'm not going to make you feel crazy for this. And also, I offer practical guidance. I teach. There's videos up there on how to cast an astrological chart, interpreting a natal chart, how to do entire series on tarot, and how to get started in ritual. So it's a wealth, I think, for people that are looking for very well informed and practiced guidance into magic, because I don't think that I don't, YouTube is a double-edged sword, because somebody who just started this stuff last year could become like a superstar. It's
yeah.
and which is fine, but you might not be getting the best possible information. So I felt a little bit of an onus, a little bit of a shove to, like, hey, get involved. And it just kind of took off. I mean, but I did astrologically elect for the first episode, the the premiere of the first episode. So I used a little bit of astrological magic.
Oh, that is good. What has been did you have a favorite interview so far, or a deepest dive so
Hmm.
far in this beautiful channel?
I would say, well, I don't want to make my other guests feel
No.
a little left out, but I will say that one that performed extremely well, one that I've gotten like a really, really intense good amount of feedback from, is I recently spoke to Professor Walter Hanegraaff, and so he's an author, and this guy is one of the OGs of the
Mhm.
study of occultism. I'm telling you, he has been a huge part of what is going on, the beautiful renaissance of the occult and magic and hermetic traditions in Amsterdam. So he's the professor of the history of hermetic philosophy and related currents at the University of Amsterdam,
Wow.
and he's heavily involved with the Rittman Library, which hosts all those great occult seminars and has all those great occult books. So he and I met in Egypt at a conference that I organized called I co-organized it with Mervat Nasser, called the New Hermopolis Symposium. And we got scholars and practitioners from all over the world to sequester for 5 days in the Egyptian desert. Like, couldn't get away from each other. You have to deal with each other, make nice. But really, it was a wonderful event, and everybody brought the exact kind of spirit to it that we had hoped they would. And so Walter and I got to talking, and he was like, you know what, I'd love to come on the podcast and talk to you since you're a practitioner. So that was a really, really great podcast episode. It was actually episode 1 of this 6th season, which has just premiered about a month ago. And then I just put up a new episode on theurgy, and people have been waiting a really long time for it. And I went deep. There are several other, content creators who have covered it, but I did my absolute best to go deeper and further and cover stuff that wouldn't be redundant. So I hope everybody enjoys that.
So where do people, I mean, we'll get into where they can find you and all that, but where do people find this?
So you go on YouTube and you just type in Arcanum, except in the beginning, I was foolish enough to typeset the U as a V. So it's ARCANVM, because in Latin, that is a U. So it's Arcanum. And you can just search that on YouTube. And my documentary style videos will come up, as well as the podcast episodes.
Okay. Yeah, you guys check it out. It is amazing. Now, you said you also offer one-on-one tutorship with people in lots of areas: alchemy, astrology, divination. What do you find your students, are they curious about one thing over the other right now, or is it this big expansion?
Astrology is really big. Astrology, and because of how vocal I am with theurgic ceremonial, people are interested in theurgy. But really, it's a mixed bag. I would say, though, the majority, 60% of the people who come to me come for some form of astrology, whether it's they want me to help them to, I do natal chart interpretations, but I'd rather give you the tools so that you can work with your natal chart magically and whatever, karmically, whatever you want to do with it. So I'll sit down with people. We'll go over the natal chart. I'll teach them how to look at it, how to use it. And then some people want to learn astrological magic right out of the gate, and so so we get off to the races, but I make sure everybody's got a strong foundation before I just start shooting people off into the stratosphere. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I do one of the most interesting things for me, believe it's not very magical, but I take people also through the Platonic dialogues. A lot of people aren't aware. They're essentially what we have on the textual record. 90% of magic, the theory of magic comes from the Platonic dialogues. A lot of people would, because you've had a teacher who's like in your ear about how to interpret them, how to read them. But a lot of people will never tell you. A lot of people don't even know Socrates had a spirit that told him what not to do. A lot of people don't even realize that in the Republic, there's one of the oldest out-of-body experiences, where this guy dies and he doesn't even just leave his body, he leaves the cosmos. So a lot of magic and the nature of the soul and theurgy, it's based in the Platonic dialogues, because the Platonic dialogues are a collection of the spirituality and the metaphysics of the ancient world. And Plato got it likely from, the Greeks got it from the Egyptians, but what we have, what is left, what ended up getting preserved is all of Plato's dialogues somehow miraculously over 2,500 years. So they're the best place to look for, to really understand this stuff. So that's something that's not, necessarily sexy, but it's certainly, it's been a whirlwind going through those dialogues with magical practitioners.
That's fabulous. You guys check it out. Okay, you said you have an event coming up, right? You want to tell us what you've got?
I do. So I partnered with Argos Destinations, and so they are a sort of luxury travel company, but they curate these very um, customized and I would say niche excursions. For instance, I mentioned Justin Sledge before. He just got off of a month long. He did 2 tours in Egypt with them. So I'm going to be doing an immersive excursion, and it's an on-site learning experience. Um, we're going to be going through the ancient temple sites of Upper and Lower Egypt. We're going to start obviously in Cairo. We'll go to the pyramids. We'll go to the Sphinx. We'll go to Saqqara, and go to the necropolis there, visit the pyramid of Unas, right where the pyramid texts, the main, the oldest versions of the pyramid texts are. And then we'll make our way to Upper Egypt. And we're going to be visiting, we'll have private on-site access for our little group to the Temple of Hathor at Dendara, which is one of the most impressive ruins I've ever been to. I've been to ruins all over the place, and Greece, Italy, Iceland, UK. This is like my favorite temple. So we're going to be there for sunrise, private access. We're going to be visiting the Osirion at Abydos, which is the, legendary burial place of the god Osiris. We'll also have private access to the goddess sanctuaries, particularly of Sekhmet at Luxor. And we're going to be studying the history, theory, and most importantly, the practice of Greco-Egyptian theurgic magic. And so I've spent the last 6 years reconstructing rituals from primary sources, the PGM, De Anima by Iamblichus, on the Mysteries by Iamblichus, on the Hieratic Art by Proclus, the works of Michael Psellos. I've got a whole list of these things, and a little reader for everybody that registers. So we have registration is open. We've got a few slots left. I think we're going to cap it at 24. So we've only got a few slots open. That's going to be October 18th through the 26th of 2025. So for anybody that's interested in that, you will find the links on my website, which is at ikebaker.com, IKEBAKER.com.
That is amazing. I would love to go. October's a rough month for me, but oh my God, you guys should go. This sounds good. Okay, well, before we go, I have so many questions, but we're running out of time. So if anybody is as intrigued as I am, tell people where they can find you, how they can find any social media, websites, anything that you have coming up like this.
Sure. Like I said, my website is ikebaker.com, IKEBAKER.com. That, if you go on my website, it gives you access on like a single page to all of my stuff, my blog, my latest documentary presentation, my last 3 podcast episodes, tells you about the new Hermopolis Symposium, gives you links to the Egypt trip, and it gives you an opportunity to book a 30-minute free session with me to discuss whether or not you'd like to have private one-on-one instruction. And I try to keep myself fairly accessible to people within reason, but there's a little widget on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen when you go to my website that says Ask Me Anything. You can ask me a question. Please be nice. And it'll go directly to my personal inbox. And so if you have any questions, any thoughts, or any comments, please feel free to reach out to me there. The channel is Arcanum, ARCANVM, on YouTube. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, really. So, but links to my socials are going to be on the website.
That is fascinating. Oh my gosh, you guys, check him out. I'm going to even more. All right. Any last great words of wisdom for us in this 2025 world that we live in for people to hold on to?
I'm searching for my own words, my own mantra or pep talk, but I think, yeah, I'm very happy that that you had me on today. I really appreciate being here, and I think that community is really important right now. And I think that it doesn't matter what style of magic you practice. It doesn't matter, whether you've just started or whether you've been in the game for 40, 50 years. Doesn't matter if you've written a book or if you haven't written a book. What matters is that we are really part of a single tradition, and we have to keep it alive, and we do that by interacting with each other and remaining in community. So I think that's really important. You mentioned it's 2025 and things are kind of coming undone at the seams, but I think if we can just find the love for each other and what we do, then our communities will survive as they have for millennia.
Yeah. Words of wisdom indeed. Thank you. I think that is a word we need more than anything right now. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ike. This is great. You guys, IkeBaker.com. Check him out. Check his channel. See you on the witching hour. Thank
Thanks for having me.
you. Yay.
Great. We're going to do a quick commercial. Patty, do you want to run them through it?
Yeah, I'm going to say this week on the Witching Hour, we have practitioner and author, an amazing guy all around, Ike Baker. And then I'm going to say, what are we going to talk about this week, Ike? In like 3 or 4 lines. It's a little 20-second blurb commercial we'll send you the night before. And you could say whatever you want. You could talk about your new book. You could talk about practice. You could, whatever you want. It's just a tease.
Sure.
Thanks. Hey everybody, this is Patty. Welcome to the Witching Hour. Oh my goodness, we have a great guest for you this week. He is a practitioner, he is an author, he is an amazing guy. Ike Baker. What are we going to talk about this week, Ike?
We're going to talk about etheric magic. We're going to talk about theurgic magic. We're going to talk about community, and we are going to talk about sacred Egypt.
You